Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei is the son of the Dragon King Acnologia Part 2. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the DragonKingNatsu for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. The day was another beautiful day at Kuo Academy. With Y students, awesome clubs, and tolerable classes, the school had everything a teenage boy would ever need, and Issei couldn't be happier to be attending. Now a second year, Issei had found in Kuo Academy the exact distraction he needed. A year ago, he'd never have expected to be so accepting of the human educational system, much less coming back for another year. Then again, looking back, he was kind of a gloomy psycho with a deep unfounded dislike for those weaker than him. He'd come to learn that anyone who can sit through hours of boring lessons day after day deserves a menial amount of respect. That respect for humans practically tippled when he, on a whim, joined the kendo club. Filled with girls who could smack him silly with a wooden stick, that club was something else. Sure, it would barely take him any effort to kill them all, but their skill was still remarkable. Murayama and Caddis, the co-captains, ran a tight ship and really put tons of effort into each practice, almost the same fervor that Issei had during his dragon killing days. Maybe he was on his way to learning to see things from Gildert's perspective, and maybe Drake was right about school taking his mind off of Acnologia. Instead of brooding, Issei no longer worried about what his father was doing. He even made friends which, considering his upbringing, was a complete shock to his uncle. Every now and then, Issei would let Murayama and Caddis into his new apartment, and the three would play games and watch movies. As it turns out, Issei had a total obsession with gaming, not that Drake would ever complain. Using Azazel's money and influence made it easy to get the kid the latest games, and the kendo club loved it. He wasn't interested in dating them, no way. Especially not after that incident with Aika Kiryu, the female counterpart to the lecherous perverted duo. He had never had a conversation so full of innuendos in his life. That, and her attention was mostly on his crotch for their entire date. Yep, that is why he was totally cool with staying friends with the kendo girls. The day everything finally changed started exactly the same. He waved bye to Drake, who was currently passed out on the couch, tossed together some breakfast, gathered his stuff and left. As he entered the school, he noticed the same expressionless face focused on him. Kaneko Taoju, a first-year cat. Hell, she even smelled somewhat like a cat mixed with something Issei couldn't place. The point was, she was a devil, and she noticed something was weird with him, and that day, like every other, she would try to find out why. Heh, I learned from the best, sucker, Issei taunted inwardly. Morning, Issei-senpai. This cute little girl, called the school mascot by many, had tomboyish white hair and a short figure. Hey, Kaneko-chan, the dragon returned with a wave, continuing to class. Like every other day, he sat through his lessons, bored out of his mind. After that ended, he went to the kendo club. It was the middle of the week, so they met for a couple hours. Today, Issei was partnered with one of the newbies, whose ass he promptly kicked. It was all technique, no supernatural strength needed. One day, he was going to find himself a real sword, like the one Drake told him about, Excalibur. That was a lot more efficient than waving around a wooden stick. After kendo, Issei decided to head directly back to the apartment. As he passed a bridge on the way back, he noticed a schoolgirl with dark black hair and a uniform from one of the neighboring academies. She was a mix between adorable and mature, and her violet eyes avoided him intentionally, though Issei could tell she was interested. Then there was the fact that she smelled a bit like a bird. A fallen angel. He guessed. Ayano. Are you Haidu, Issei sent from Kuo Academy? She sounded so innocent, completely unlike a fallen person. Why yeah. I'm Amano Yuma. She blushed. I've seen you around. I think you're cute and your tattoos are cool too. Yeah, the bright blue did bring a lot of attention whenever he wore short sleeves. It was kind of weird, though, that she just approached him now. Issei had been a Kuo for at least a year and a half now, and people had stopped commenting about how strange he was and just accepted it. He had no idea how, after all this time spent undetected, a fallen angel decided to approach him now. Okay. Just where was this going? I wanted to know, will you go out with me? Did he hear her right? I don't know. It's all a little sudden. Besides, Issei wasn't sure dating a fallen angel was the best of ideas. Well, she was cute, so that gave her points, but it wouldn't save him from his uncle. If he accepted her offer, then he'd be stuck in some feudal fallen angel ploy for sure. But on the other hand, refusing might be suspicious. There was always the chance that Drake's paranoia was rubbing off on him, and the girl was legitimately interested because dragons, after all, are said to have quite the effect on the opposite gender. Do you not like me, Issei-san? She shuffled nervously, moving close to Issei and pressing her against him. Not appropriate. Have to decide. "Oh, of course not, Yuma-san." In that innocent virgin tone, she replied, "Will a kiss change your mind?" He gulped. No, it's alright Angel-san. I mean Yuma-san. Damn, how could he have slipped up like that? It's just that this girl made him so flustered. You know I'm a fallen angel. She backed off, completely floored, her demeanor now far more compassed and mature. Issei rubbed his head. I'm not any good at deceiving people. I never really understood the need for all the underhanded stuff, you know. Dragons were notoriously poor illusionists, and the teen was doubly so. Drake was convinced that it was because he didn't have the best social skills, while Issei liked to believe he was too honest for that. No, I don't. Yuma deadpanned. Well, that complicates things. My name is actually Raynare, and as you so accurately guessed, I'm a fallen angel. So, now that pleasantries are out of the way, how does a weak human like you know about us? Issei nearly growled at being so openly insulted at close proximity. Calm down. Deep breaths. What makes you think I'm weak, Raynare? She rolled her eyes as if it was obvious. Your aura is pathetic. I know you have a sacred gear, your slightly draconic energy tells me that much, but there is no way it's a Welkin. It seems she was wrong on both counts, and he had half a mind to beat some sense in her. That, however, was probably a terrible idea, since it would only draw more attention from other fallen angels. Fine, I'll answer your question, Issei relented, still on edge. He had much better control than 2 years ago, but he didn't know how long it would hold before he incinerated her. My parents were magicians. That's news, Raynare hummed, disappointed in her ability to uncover Issei's past. She had managed to learn that he was born with a sacred gear, and she knew it was a powerful one, but she had overlooked something that could have been important. And then there was the fact that she knew why she was sent to monitor Issei. It would be a waste of my time to kill you, and I have other places to be. What do you say we meet up Sunday at 3, by the mall? She gave him a cruel smirk. Maybe she would be able to find out more on Issei and his sacred gear before they met again. That, or he could make use of the boy instead of just killing him. She still wanted to ask him out. What exactly was her game? Issei couldn't even begin to understand the thoughts flowing through the fallen angel's head. It was about then when he realized that neither had moved an inch and the fallens were still stuffed against his okay. It's a date then, she smirked, pushing herself off of Issei. Without another word, she turned and walked away, as if suddenly uninterested. Meanwhile, at the old school building of Kuo Academy, Ria's Gremory sat cross-legged on a chair, staring intently at a chessboard. Her opponent. Akeno Himejima, fellow devil and Ria's queen. The two had been friends for a long time, despite the fact that, strictly speaking, Ria's was the master and Akeno the servant. Ever since Ria's moved her base of operations to Kuo, her peerage, her group of reincarnated servants, were members of the Occult Research Club. The only other person in the room, Kiba, was leaning against the wall, watching the game. A red circle appeared in the center, and out stepped Kaneko. But you, she greeted with a nod of her head. Kaneko, I trust you have news on our website. He met with a fallen angel, she replied plainly, taking a seat on the large couch. Ria's raised an eyebrow. Did you overhear anything important? Not too far away, Kaneko said. The last thing someone on surveillance wanted was to tip off the person they were tailing. Issei's senses were sharp, almost too sharp, so she had to keep her distance. The club president thought aloud. It's likely they think Issei has sacred gear. My best guess is that she's going to kill him. So your intuition was right, then? Akeno supplied. That made Ria shake her head. No, something doesn't add up here, and I don't like it. Kaneko has been on edge all year because something about Issei feels dangerous. That alone was cause for concern, since she cared for her servants like family, and any threats had to be dealt with. If it was just a sacred gear, I should be able to sense it, but I can't. I can tell Issei has some type of power, but that's it. She usually trusted her intuition with these things, but Issei was an enigma the likes of which she'd never seen before. The queen grinned sadistically. I would love to interrogate him for you, but you. Yeah, great idea, Ria's thought sarcastically about her best friend's odd bedroom habits. I don't want to get in the fallen angel's way. Whether I like it or not, I still have to play politics, and the Gremory heir fighting with the fallen over a human wouldn't make my father happy. There was an opinion she hadn't heard yet, and she couldn't afford not to have the input. What do you think, Yudo? Yudo Kiba, her knight, had a calm head on his shoulders. You could always ask him, offered the knight. Such a straightforward guy, she expected no less from him. That's true, Ria's thought, having considered this before. Still, she wasn't one to rush into situations, and they had next to no intel about their fellow student. There was, of course, his uncle, who couldn't appear more normal despite the obvious fiery hair color. The man was quite plain. He was a consultant who worked with an antiques firm and a fan of spending the night out, and he had been involved with 0 supernatural events, so the chances were slim that he knew. She came to the conclusion that either Issei was amazing at hiding his true identity and Kaneko was right to be cautious, or they were all overreacting. Knowing these two options, the Redeed heir to the Gremory house decided on the one foolproof plan to figure out the answers. Kaneko, follow him and keep your distance. When he next encounters that fallen angel, try to listen in. In case they do choose to kill him, my familiar will slip him a flyer. Hopefully, that tied up all the loose ends. Riaz felt a little guilty that she could be responsible for her Kauhai's death, yet she knew that in the end, things would turn out for the best. After she was unable to find the dragon, she was optimistic that she wouldn't miss out on this opportunity. By the way, Akeno. Checkmate. When Issei arrived back at the apartment, he was surprised to see that Drake was already there. The past few weeks, his uncle had been busy with work. When he had asked why Drake was gone so often, the Red Dragon only referred to their mysterious source of income and fake identities. Issei knew that the strange dragon knew someone in one of the three factions with the resources and means to keep them hidden, but he had no idea why. Drake insisted that it was better that he was left out of the loop, and the teen had grown to accept that as the way things were. From what he knew, their mysterious benefactor had been an old friend of the Heavenly Dragon. "What are you doing here?" Issei asked, flat out. His uncle faked sadness, then grinned. "I finished the project I was working on. Yes, it has to do with the man who so kindly lent us this house." "Then I guess you won't tell me," figured the teen. "Well, not yet. It's a birthday present." Issei was interested now. Drake knew that he thought birthdays were pointless, one of the many lessons learned during his childhood, so it must be quite the unique gift. "What is it?" "Have you no patience, partner?" his uncle accused, obviously unimpressed. "No." The Welsh dragon raised an eyebrow. One-word answers were bad. Issei was the rambling type, not the cold, glaring type. There were very few times these days when the kid acted like this. "Alright, what gives?" "I've got a date Sunday," Issei sighed, downcast. Drake's mind was boggled. How was the kid upset? Dates were one of the best things ever. He'd gone on at least 30 in the past year, all with different human women, and had awesome times. Much better than dealing with female dragons, he liked to think. "You've got a date," he repeated. "Didn't you say the last one with that nice girl Kiryu, I think scarred you for life?" Issei knew he was screwed one way or the other, so he just let it out. "It's with a fallen angel, Raynare, and she's horrible. She acted all schoolgirly and innocent, then I slipped up and she knew I knew what she was. Then she got all condescending and called me a weak human. Oh man, Drake knew that was a huge mistake on her part. Then she said I wasn't even worth killing. When I see her again, she's so dead. So, how'd you mess up?" "I'd say that it's unlike you, but..." He was interrupted. I know. It was hard to think when her boobs were pressed against me. Thoughts of nearly made him stumble, so he changed his focus. "She seemed really nice too." "Ah, so you like her?" The Welsh dragon laughed. "What? No." Issei denied. "I mean, she's hot, but I don't like her. She was following me around cause she thought I had a sacred gear. Plus, she's not my type." Drake rolled his eyes, knowing that his nephew didn't have a type even if cruel, mean, and bitchy wasn't it. The last thing he wanted was anyone to remind him of a certain black dragon, especially someone he was dating. "I think you're just being shy." Still, this was a bit of a serious situation, not time for jokes. "So, you say she was following you because she suspected you had sacred gear. I suppose that your magic-powered does come off in a way similar to how a sacred gear feels. But there are tons of humans with sacred gears. Why would a fallen angel bother with following me?" "That's a good question," considered Drake as he thought up possibilities. There was no way that Azazel put her up to this, was there? If he did, there were definitely no orders to threaten, much less kill the teen. Azazel wasn't stupid enough to send his subordinates to their deaths, but maybe he still wanted to keep an eye on Issei. That would mean he didn't trust Drake, despite their year of reconciliation, which was a smart move on his part. Smart, devious, and totally uncalled for, exactly like one would expect from a fallen angel. But he probably shouldn't jump to conclusions and get riled up based on mere suppositions. Dragons were honest, often brutally so, which meant his first course of action would be to just ask the Grigori's leader, though he doubted he'd get a straight answer. "I don't know, partner. I've got someone I can ask, but in the case that fails, I've got a backup plan." "Backup plan?" "Yep. She probably wants to get some more information out of you, and we're going to do the same right back." That was followed by an odd, scheming look. "First, though, I'm going to need to teach you about girls." Oh great, Issei could tell this was going to be a disaster. Over the next couple days, Issei had noticed that the devils at school were paying extra special attention to him. Of course, he wasn't worried, and Drake claimed that it was to be expected with a fallen angel in their territory meeting up with him. The teen knew that Drake's optimism at their ability to remain hidden was completely unfounded, and the old dragon was too apprehensive at being found out to accept the obvious. To be plain, Issei was growing annoyed at his uncle's paranoia. If he had that kind of power so that he was even stronger than his father, no one could force him into hiding. He'd be proud and confident, like he was raised to be. The dominoes were falling, Drake's original plan had come up empty, and Issei was on his way to meet the one who knocked over the first one, Raynare. Somehow, he just knew that this Sunday was going to suck. Alright, I'm at the dang mall, and it's 3:30, he complained. He should have known that the fallen angel was the exact type to keep him waiting just for her own amusement. I wonder if she'll even show. Drake, using whatever magical contact he had, was unable to find out anything at all about Raynare. According to him, she was supposed to check in on Issei once, simply to make sure that the kid was acting normal. Nothing beyond that. So, in other words, the two had no idea what she was doing following up on Issei, an action probably well above her pay grade. Just then, he was shocked out of his thoughts by an unfamiliar black-haired girl tripping in front of him, spilling flyers all over the place. "Are you alright?" he asked, as she shuffled around to pick up all of them. "Weird, they look like magic circles, and have the words 'I will grant your deepest desire' on them," he thought as he picked up a few, placing them in her pile. After all of them were picked up, she placed one in his hand and smiled, not saying a word. Her teeth are a bit sharp for a human, and something else about her is funny too, he noticed, but she wasn't a devil or fallen angel. Shrugged, he put the flyer in his pocket as she took off as quickly as she came. Man, he was just the epicenter of weirdness, wasn't he? Finally, Raynare was here. Her clothes were far more revealing than the last time the two met, and she was a couple inches taller, but she couldn't change her scent. Dressed as something between a stripper and a hardcore military chick, she was quite the sight, barely blending in with typical human dress at all. Oh man, I forgot to dress up. Shoot, he was in a blue Portal-themed shirt and black pants, way too lame for a date. Portal was a cool game for sure, though hardly a good theme for dressing fancy. You weren't waiting long, were you? She gave him an insufferable smirk. Nope, Issei shot back, only 30 minutes. Barely even noticed. Ahahaha, she chuckled, it seems you've got some fire after all. Maybe this date isn't a complete waste of my time. It had better not be a waste of mine, he replied in kind. They were having dinner at Issei's favorite American food joint. It wasn't the fast food kind, more the diner variety, but they served a mean hamburger. As the two occupied a booth right by the window, they stared intently at each other, as if waiting for the other to say something. Eventually, the tension was getting too infuriating for Issei. "So, you follow me around then ask me on a date when you clearly have no interest. Why?" "Oh, who said I'm not interested?" Raynare giggled in a tone somewhat unlike her. "I haven't been with a man in a long time. Humans just don't do much for me anymore, and I guess I intimidate some of the others in my generation." "Really?" He was kind of unprepared for that answer. It seemed almost genuine. "I thought you just wanted to learn about my past and my sacred gear. Aren't those both things a girl should know about a potential boyfriend?" Damn these rhetorical questions, they were getting old. Clearly, she was teasing him. "Fine. A trade was in order then. I'll tell you if you tell me why." The fallen rolled her eyes, shifting her shirt to expose more cleavage. "Loosen up, will you? We're on a date, Issei-kun, not at a funeral. As for why, I guess you surprised me is all. The son of two magicians, wandering around with sacred gear and no one to teach him how to use it. I could give you the guidance you need," she proposed suggestively. This woman had no shame, none at all. If Issei wasn't so uptight about this, he'd certainly be enjoying the sight of a beautiful woman very nearly exposing herself in public for him. "So that's what this is, a job offer? I can offer you a lot more things than just a job," she stated lewdly, caressing his cheek across the table. His face flushing red, he managed, "That's really nice, Ray-chan. You're quite cute when you get like that," the fallen chuckled, sitting back in her seat. Issei tried to divert his attention, as if refusing to indulge her. "Why don't we start learning about each other? We're on a date after all," she smiled. The dragon kept silent, his gaze drifting unintentionally towards her skimpy clothes. "You don't trust me, do you?" The fallen was right on the mark with that one. "You're a smart boy, Issei-kun. Why do you care so much? What's so important about me?" "Nothing. The higher-ups wanted me to observe you for one day and see if you get into trouble because I heard rumors the leader is interested in your sacred gear." "Ah, but that isn't what I'm doing, is it, Issei-kun? I think they're downsizing your potential. Working for me? I could give you anything you'd want, even me." She gestured to herself. She grinned. "I guess you could say that you've made me very curious, magic boy." Doesn't take much to get you curious, does it?" he observed. "Ha." She laughed. "I guess I don't like things I can't understand. Fatal flaw," she joked. Really, though, Issei knew she thought she was near flawless, and she was far too prideful for the power she held. I'm fine not knowing things, Issei replied. Magic and all of that, it's so freaking cool, but it makes no sense. Why was he actually conversing with her like this? Sure, Drake did tell him that the best way to get info was to give some, making sure yours was less useful, but he was actually telling her things he'd never told anyone save Drake and Gilderts. Really? I suppose that's for the best. There's stuff out there that humans never be able to make sense of. She wasn't even going to bother explaining what a sacred gear was. In fact, she assumed that Issei already had a good idea of their history for some reason. Your parents were magicians, learn any magic? Both died when I was 5, Issei stated. He didn't feel anything about it, and Raynare knew it. So, no. My uncle's normal and never knew them. Half-truths, the best way to lie. He had to thank Drake for putting the words in his mouth, since he was awful with deception. Such a shame. Mine died as well. It's sad that the numbers of the 3 factions dwindled so much from the war. Thankfully, the new generation is said to have such promise, and I'm the strongest of them. Man, she couldn't resist gloating, could she? So you think you're strong, huh? I can easily dispatch a mid-class devil. Issei huffed internally. Yeah, well, I bet I could go toe-to-toe with one of your leaders. Though that made him happy that he was much stronger, he was nowhere near his goal of taking down a Dragon King. That he hadn't trained much in the last year wasn't helping his confidence in this moment. That's impressive, he lied through his teeth. Do you think so? Raynare smiled, placing a hand on his. Issei almost blushed at the gesture of affection, instead settling on a similar smile. Yeah. Most humans couldn't contend with a fallen angel like you. That was a sort of passive-aggressive compliment between Issei's own parents' demise and his genuine approval of her relative strength compared with her fellow fallen. At least he wasn't talking with the runt of the group, even if the strongest was still an ant compared to his own power. You're sweet, you know that, Issei-kun. Tell you what, next date, I'll show you to a couple of Grigori's magicians as a thank you. Issei almost didn't catch the clever reintroduction of her offer. Next date? Oh yes, I'm having fun. Aren't you? Well, I guess it's okay. Better than his last one with Kiryu at least. You seriously need to let go. Life's better when you show your wild side. Wild side? Raynare grinned. Tell me, Issei. Have you ever gone to a club before? Issei had no idea when, throughout the entire crazy-ass date, that he began to see Raynare as more than a total bitch. She was smart, cunning, and resourceful, even though her arrogance, disrespect, and poor sensing ability were kind of a letdown. Maybe she'd have been nicer if he told her what he was, he wondered a couple times, nearly spilling the beans. Then he remembered Drake telling him that that was exactly what she desired, Issei's deepest secrets, and the last thing the brunette wanted to do was drag his uncle into this. That meant enduring the date, even though it didn't turn out as bad as he thought it would. Raynare even took him to a club. It was a little unusual, being around 6 in the afternoon and all, and that he was only 17, but he had a surprisingly good time. Despite the fact that he wasn't the type of person to go to clubs, he recognized the ability to drown away woes and worries with loud music and inappropriate dancing. At one point, she insisted they have, but that crossed the line. No way in hell would Issei screw someone who is as big of an asshole as her. And then there was the whole complicated emotions bit that certainly didn't help. Now, the two were finishing their date, walking hand in hand through the park. See, Issei-kun, this date wasn't so bad after all. I guess. He wasn't sure how to respond to the comment. Look, Raynare sighed. I don't know what fucked you over in the past to make you so closed off, and I don't care. This was reassuring and positive advice already. Not. I was an angel. I feel cause I like to have fun every now and then, and now you know that the rest of my faction and I aren't as horrible as you thought. Wow, she was good at reading him. How in the name of God did she know that he disliked fallen angels for what happened in his past? Was she guessing at that, or was he reading too far into her comment? I suppose the club was alright. He'd never seen so many beautiful women in one place, not even at his mostly girls' school. Alright. She almost laughed. You know you had a good time, Issei-kun. The offer still stands. You could join the Grigori. Now, you may be a weak, naive human, but I'm sure we could find a way to make you at least competent. To be honest, the proposition was a bit more tempting now that he'd learned about her. The manipulative party girl, kicked out of heaven, trying to make a name for himself was certainly far more three-dimensional than the asshole she first painted herself to be. However, he still had his obligations to Drake, and he wasn't about to join one of the factions. If he did, there was no way that people wouldn't discover that a heavenly dragon, a being that once had the capability to destroy the world, had been unsealed. Yeah, that would be bad. I'm sorry, Ray-chan. He had no idea why he bothered with the nickname. Do I really like her? He wondered vaguely, not understanding a bit of it. I can't. That made her surprisingly upset. You're sure? Yeah. I'd rather keep to myself. She groaned, taking her hand away from his and stepping in front to face him. She was standing a few feet in front, a fountain right behind her. Why couldn't you have just accepted? I wasn't lying when I said I was starting to like you, Issei. You were a nice challenge for a girl like me, she smirked, removing the affectionate tone almost completely. Almost. That he exclaimed, confused. A challenge. She ran a hand across his cheek again. Oh, Issei. You were so childish at times, but you never opened up completely. I wanted to pry every little thing out of that little head of yours and use it to get you to work for me, but you insist on being so damn determined. So, this was how it ended. Exactly as Drake said it would, and he'd stupidly thought that she actually had grown to like him in that twisted way of hers. Even after admitting that she was trying to trick him, he fell for the same gag a second time. You're pathetic. He could imagine his father's taunts at his situation. You call yourself my son. Shut up, Issei muttered. Such a foolish human, ordering me around. Raynare cackled. I think it's time you learned not to look a gift horse in the mouth. She stepped back, feathery black wings spreading out from behind her as she took to the skies, hovering a few feet in the air. They are like his wings, he noticed. So weak to imitate a king of dragons so poorly. A spear of bright radiating light, far too holy for the hands of such a demon, formed in front of her. Sadly, the joke is over. It's time for you to die. She threw it. Issei barely registered the pain as it collided with his stomach, burning a large hole in his shirt. You didn't even react, Raynare gloated. Pathetic, Issei murmured, gazing downwards at where the spear hit him as it faded into nothing. What? The fallen exclaimed, sure had easily one shot at him. Can you still stand? I was pathetic. He gazed up at her, his normally hazel eyes contracted into thin slits. To believe you actually cared for his stomach, she realized, it was completely unharmed. There was a red mark, a small sign that he had actually been hit by the attack, but there was no way a human could resist this so effortlessly. The light spear should have been buried through his body. A dark navy-colored aura started leaking out, casting a sinister feeling around the surroundings. I don't know why I'm so weak. Human, ha. Why did I even pretend to be one? Right then, Raynare knew that she was in deep shit. This aura that he was radiating was incredible yet necessary question. Yes, that shouldn't be a problem. Raynare could have sworn that the mysterious woman's smirk was sinister. Then I can help you take care of this pest. She could ever hope to match. And she had insulted him, taunted him, manipulated him. Weak, he commented, taking a step forward. Raynare, instinctively, moved back in sync. He shouldn't do this, he still had control. Still, I'm not a killer. The aura and killing intent in the air certainly said otherwise, but she wasn't going to argue. What are you doing? What was this, a memory? Issei was 12, and it was the first time had ever fought a dragon without his father's help. The victim was a particularly weak one that even a young Issei was able to overpower with chaos dragon magic and liberal use of an advanced form of dragonforce. An earth dragon, name unimportant to him, lay dying, her normally rock-hard scales shattered into bits and leaking blood. What are you doing? His father shouted, watching Issei stare at his opponent. Was it admiration? Trepidation? Acnologia glared at him, anger seeping through. Is this not what you wanted? Power. It called you weak, undermined your existence. Why do you wait to eliminate such an unworthy adversary, one who does not deserve to live? Eliminate her? Yes, he could do that. She was weaker than him, right, and only the strong deserved to live. That was why his father taught him to ignore the existence of humans because they were a disgrace to his philosophy. You're my son, Issei Haidu. The dragon roared, his mere voice tearing up the very ground, dust and earth flying everywhere. You should learn to act like it. And so the first of many died. Act like it. Like his son Issei considered taking another step. I'm not him, it wasn't convincing. Finding reasons to spare the fallen he had actually considered taking for a second date was becoming harder by the second. Be a better man than your father, Drake had once told him, but he didn't know if he could do that. He had to make his decision now, and he did. Leave, now. Or I will kill you. The fallen angel did not need to be told twice, taking off with unimaginable speed, as if the terror of God himself was right on her heels. Black feathers fell from the sky as the fleeing girl vanished from sight. Issei took a breath. Calm down. She's gone. You're not weak. He repeated the simple sentences, trying to beat the mantra into his thick skull. I'm nothing like him, he assured himself. He admired the dragon, and he tried to tell himself that was wrong. Someone stronger, more confident, wouldn't have indulged her from the start. Hell, they wouldn't be blending in like a coward. I'm not a coward. He bit out. Chaos dragon magic had an unfortunate side effect on the user's psyche, one that Issei was aware of but didn't care about at the moment. All he could feel was his rage building. Coward, such a distasteful word. Its context referred to something without the gall to stand up for itself, and Issei never wanted to think of himself as that kind of coward. Speaking of the word, there was an unlucky cat snooping from behind the bushes. She was a coward, just like him. Come on out, Kaneko-chan. You're happy, now, huh? He had caught her tail only 30 minutes back, though he suspected she'd been following for much longer. Said devil stepped out from behind the bushes, betraying a look of slight concern. This was not the Issei she knew, even if the two barely had much contact in the past. There was no way this was the gentle, awkward, kind-hearted yet mysterious member of the kendo club she'd been observing for the past couple weeks. She knew he didn't mean to be harsh. After what happened with Raynare, he felt betrayed, violent, and the last thing he wanted to do was take it out on a niece, even if she was a devil. But before he stalked home to Drag, he had one more thing to say. Tell Ria's Gremory I'm done hiding. You alright, partner? Issei had barged into the house, magic power still leaking off his body like wispy steam, glaring at the wall. Obviously, something was wrong. In a detached tone, he answered, I'm fine, Drag. Bad date, huh? The red dragon figured, taking a seat on the couch. She was so weak, so pathetic, he muttered, sitting next to his uncle. Sometimes, I think Dad was right. This was taking a turn for the worse. Never in the past year had Issei called his father Dad, preferring to reference him indirectly or dance around the topic. While he may be pretty bad at counseling, Drake thought of himself as the only being in two worlds who could tell what exactly was on the kid's mind. Well, aside from when women were involved, he was an open book then. Right about what? He ventured. Power. I gain nothing from hiding. She thought herself above me. Me, the son of Acnologia. Oh man, Issei was definitely on track to landing himself in the deep end. He sounded upset, likely angry at himself for being unable to decide whether to follow his father's teachings or uncle's advice. Acnologia had the devastating effect of making Issei detest his own weakness. She toyed with me, Drake, and when I refused to join her useless organization, she tried to kill me. You didn't kill her, did you? Drake wasn't too concerned about the ramifications of actually killing the woman, he just preferred it if Issei tried to stay calm and value others' lives more. Issei bared his teeth in a very inhuman gesture. I'm not my father. Maybe it wasn't all bad after all. I'm weak. I didn't have it in me. Trust me, the Welsh dragon smirked lightly, you've got in you, partner. He'd seen it plenty of times, enough that it unnerved him. But you're right, you aren't Acnologia. You're better. So why don't I feel better? Losing control and nearly obliterating some girl because she tricked him. Wasn't too much of an overreaction when he was in no real danger the whole time. Acnologia would tell him that she wasn't even worth acknowledging in the first place, and if he was betrayed by her, then he should kill her, no questions asked. No matter what magic you use, you aren't going to become a psycho, so calm down and breathe, partner. He got the feeling that Issei wasn't too comforted by the advice. I'd rather go crazy than keep sitting on my ass like this. It's making me go senile, like you. Nice, really nice, partner, Drake sighed. He knew the teen didn't mean it and was just being rash, but still. Issei hated that one of the two heavenly dragons was content with living a boring life when, for millennia prior, he had been at the forefront of every adventure. Without the continual fight with Albion and the struggles of helping the host of the boosted gear, Drake had no goals for himself. The reason he didn't want to be resealed and thus kept them hidden was supposedly for his nephew, but Issei had trouble believing that. I've fought plenty and terrorized enough, but you're 1,000 years too young to know if I'm senile or not. Issei scoffed. I'm almost an adult. No, you're 17. You're still a whelp in dragon terms, whether you like it or not. Maybe I am being too paranoid though. I'll tell you what, you can do whatever you want now, but don't expect me to bail you out. Issei was strong enough to take care of himself, true, and he wasn't so powerful that he was a threat to the world. Perhaps it was time to treat the kid like all of the other hosts of the boosted gear, and not solely as his nephew. Really? He seemed hopeful now, a good leap from just a few seconds ago. You'll finally stop it with the factions are out to get us talks. Yeah. Go show those devils at school what it means to be the son of a dragon king. Though Issei wasn't sure how he really felt about Acnologia, he was still proud to be his son. A bit confusing, but Issei loved that he would inherit such an esteemed mantle. And Ria's Gremory was about to learn just what that meant. School, unsurprisingly, seemed kind of lame after Sunday's events. Issei had put up with Raynare, gone to a nightclub, and nearly went insane, and he was expected to pay attention in maths class. Well, that didn't happen at all. Murayama, during lunch, pointed out that he seemed a bit off, and she was absolutely right. His response was simply that his date sucked, though the kendo captain wasn't convinced. Issei was usually pretty upbeat, so she knew it was far worse than he was letting on, but she knew better than to pry into her friend's life. Ever since she first saw him, he'd been a mystery. Even after calming down and realizing how worked up he'd gotten, the thought still lingered in his head. Am I really strong enough? Was my father right about some of this? Instead of taking notes, he was busy gazing out of the window. In more than a simple daydream, he was lamenting the fact that he hadn't gone flying at all in the past year. It never really bothered him till now how accepting he was of blending in. The clouds, the sky, the wind, all were things that he felt like he could hardly remember. How was okay with this? Hey, everyone. A calm, polite male voice interrupted his thoughts. Only one person sounded that princely, the so-called Prince of Kuo, Kiba, a devil. Issei turned to see the handsome young blonde standing with a kind smile. It seemed he had interrupted class, and the girls were all too happy that he chose to visit. Man, he gets all the cute girls, doesn't he? Issei and probably less crazy ones too. Though, if he knew anything about Yudo's fangirls, some might be just as insane as Raynare. When he noticed that the prince was walking across the room, a thought struck. Wait, he's not the one they sent to get me, is he? Hi to Issei-san. The blonde addressed respectfully. Issei and Kiba-kun as a couple. Cadis murmured to Murayama, that's so adorable. I'd ship that, Murayama replied back, unknowing that Issei's enhanced hearing easily caught it. The two dissolved into comments and giggles, and the dragon rolled his eyes. They may have been his friends, but they were plenty weird. Oh, wait, had Yudo said something? I said, Ria's Gremory asked me to fetch you. Well, who am I to deny such a hot girl? Issei grinned. Lead the way, pretty boy. The old school building didn't look that old at all. In fact, it was equally as nice as the normal campus, just a whole lot more antique-styled, perfect for all things occult. For some reason, the image of devils in a modern business meeting room made Issei smirk. The Occult Research Club room itself had candles, old-style lamps, and Victorian couches, all throwing the occult theme in your face. What was unusual, though, was the shower built into the side of the room. And someone was currently in it. So, this is the Occult Research Club, Haidu-san, Kiba introduced. Hey Kaneko-chan, I greeted Issei. Sorry about last night. The adorable mascot remained emotionless. Accepted. You were within reason to be upset. Wait, so who else was in Ria's peerage, Issei wondered. He could smell a bunch of devils at the school, but he only bothered with figuring out who Kaneko's master was, since she had spent a while following him. Obviously, Yudo was a member, but who else? But, there was one thing to get off his first. What is Ria's doing in the shower? He could see her silhouette through the curtain, and he couldn't stop himself from staring at his senpai's bust. How is her figure so perfect for a moment? He sympathized with the infamous perverted duo, but just for a moment. Ara, sneaking a peek are we? That was Akeno Himejima. She had luscious black hair that reached down past her knees, striking violet eyes sort of like Raynare's, and probably the biggest rack Issei had ever seen. As a teenager, he had trouble taking his eyes off of her well-proportioned features. After noticing that he'd been staring, he blushed. And not at all. But, in my defense, there's a shower in your clubhouse. True, but you're still being a pervert. Issei's face faltered. Oh Kaneko-chan, you wound me. So, Akeno said, you must be Haidu Issei. I'm Himejima Akeno, Ria's queen and vice president of the Occult Research Club. If you need anything, just ask, everyone here is very nice. Man, she had such a suggestive tone. I'll keep that in mind. She winked. I hope so. I apologize for the wait. It seemed that the Ria's Gremory, the king herself, was done with her shower. Ria's had stepped out dressed in her Kuo uniform, which did little to hide her natural curves. There was a reason she was considered the most beautiful girl in Kuo, and it wasn't just the foreign look and the silky red hair. I know it's terribly rude, but I thought it would be better if I washed up for our guests. That was unusual, but welcome. No, it's great. I mean fine. Damned it hormones, they always won in these instances. Ria's laughed. You're quite the interesting one, Haidu Issei-kun. Can I call you Ice-kun? A nickname already? They didn't even know each other well. I don't see why not. Perfect, she smiled. Everyone here is a devil in the service of the House of Gremory, though I prefer to call them my family. Yudo is my knight, Kaneko is my rook, and Akeno is my queen and longtime best friend. It seemed that they got along well. I guess you already know me, Issei replied sheepishly. You did cause quite the stir yesterday, Ria's affirmed with a smile, taking a seat on the couch. Kaneko heard your claim that you're not human. To be able to stay undetected for 2 whole years is no small feat. Kaneko's one of the best censors I know, and she was barely able to pick up on you. Her voice lost a little of the light tone, if just for a moment. You must be skilled to hide all that energy. I suppose I'm good at staying under the radar. He was a little embarrassed at the praise to be honest, though mostly because it was coming from a beautiful woman. It has to do with my markings on my body and some tricks taught by my 2 mentors. When an Earthland dragon used a human form, they kept a distinctive characteristic or pattern that transferred over, hence the markings on his arms. They were the sign of a dragonslayer whose magic had changed their body completely, but it still allowed them to flawlessly remain human, though the marks would never go away. They were a sign of who he was. Interesting. They always did grab my attention, the king commented. What exactly happened with the fallen angel, if you don't mind me asking? If there was any time to get the truth off him, it was now. No more hiding, he had said, and he wasn't about to continually try to lie. That was not what a dragon should do. Ray-chan thought I had sacred gear, so she took me on a date to get close, and she was kind of pushy to get me to join the Grigori organization. I suspected as much, Rias hummed in thought. I take it you refused. She didn't like that much, Issei jokes. Rias smiled too. I don't imagine she would have. So, after all that, do you know why you're here? Well, there couldn't be too many options here. Don't you want me to leave your territory? That was an important thing, right? Both dragons that raised him had told him such. The Grimoire chuckled. No, nothing like that. I just have a question to ask you. She probably wants to know what I am or if I'll join her peerage. Devils, even ones as nice as the Grimoire clan, were still selfish by nature. He had expected that coming in. What is it? Are you okay? Did he hear her right? Huh? Are you okay? She repeated. I can't in good conscience ignore the troubles of someone Kaneko befriended. If she's concerned, then I am too. Last night, the aura you leaked out was powerful and dangerous, and she claimed it was quite unlike you. How noble of her. Maybe the Grimoire clan was a whole other breed of devils, one who truly cared for their servants. It seemed Rias was incredibly serious about this too. That kindness definitely deserved an answer, even if he'd struggle with telling the full story. I guess my father was tough, and whenever I use my magic, I'm reminded of him. It was the first time he'd ever told anyone besides Dragon Gilderts of his problems with Acnologia, and it was great to get even this small tidbit off him. So, your father was like that. I've seen my share of unsolved family problems, Rias muttered, a hollow look in her water blue eyes, making Issei wonder just what she was referring to. It is in the past, Kaneko interjected. Yes, the red-haired king agreed. It's best if we move on for now. Okay, so if Rias wasn't going to address the elephant in the room, it seemed he had to. Don't you want to know who I am and what I'm doing here? Of course I do, Rias replied easily. I've never seen anyone like you before, Ice-kun. Tell us whatever you want to, I won't pressure you. I don't get it, he said. Why was the Redeed being so casual about this? And yet, for some reason, he felt as if he wanted to keep telling her what was plaguing him, and there was no deceit or underhanded magic involved. Still, I made a big deal about not hiding anymore, so I'll give you some answers. I don't have a sacred gear at all, the reason I have that feeling is cause I'm actually a dragon. He changed his hand and forearm to make them look dragon-like with the smooth black scales, blue markings, and deadly claws. The devils also noticed his magic power increased enough to be easily felt and recognized. He waved his hand and made it human again, his energy going back to normal levels. Aceno interrupted, a dragon that can change shape. Issei must have been quite strong to have that kind of magic. Most dragons, at least the ones Rias knew from the familiar forest, weren't intelligent. And the powerful ones that were sentient were completely incapable of even the simplest of non-dragon magic. All except Tiamat, at least, and she was rumored to be the strongest of the dragon kings, so where did that leave Issei? Wait. Rias realized. It was you 2 years ago that took care of that stray, wasn't it? That would explain how a dragon would have seemingly disappeared, though I never would have guessed he became a cute little at this school. Issei felt his cheeks heat up. She didn't hold back any affection at all, not even to a mostly stranger. I remember that stray devil. She was freaky, even worse than my date yesterday. He shuddered at the memory. So, yeah, my uncle insisted I go to a human school because he's completely insane and overprotective. Dragons weren't made to sneak around, you know. Yes, your race tends to be the straightforward type, she observed, having met a couple devil dragons in her time. There were very few of those, the most known one Tannen, a former dragon king. Dating a fallen angel must have really been tough on you, wasn't it? I do admire your commitment to try to live a normal life, even with the Grigori breathing down your back. Thanks, I guess. You're not the kind of devil I expected. She nodded, able to understand exactly what he meant. We Grimoires care for our family, an unusual belief that is looked down upon by some other devils. I also care for the students at this school, whatever or whoever they may be. That sounds nice, Issei complimented, reminded of his childhood. My father, the one who taught me what it meant to be a dragon, told me misplaced affection made people weak. You don't sound like you believe him. I don't know, Issei replied. Gilderts told me it made people stronger than ever when they had loved ones to protect. you seem like you'd do anything for them. I will, Riaz replied seriously, before her features softened again. Oddly, she didn't pursue Issei about this Gildert's person. Speaking of family. Is your uncle a dragon too? Oh no, he couldn't tell her the truth here. Drake may have given him free rein, but Issei doubted he also had permission for his identity to be revealed. Then again, Riaz had surprised him at all corners with how honest she was for a devil. Maybe there was some small exaggerations and clever manipulation of their chat, but it was leaps and bounds better than Raynare. He didn't even trust his two closest friends with the truth about himself. Riaz though, she was everything those two were and more. Confident, compassionate, smart, why shouldn't he trust her? He's the toughest dragon I know. He grinned proudly at that, glad to have such an uncle. Riaz saw the admiration in her cowhai's expression. I'd love to meet him one day. Issei, I'd like to extend to you an offer. He was a little apprehensive. If she brought him into the same rage he'd had the last night, he'd hate it if anything happened to such a nice, beautiful woman. Even after you saw what happened to the last one who said that. I suppose I am a little reckless. But you wouldn't harm me, would you, Ice-kun? She crossed her legs. Besides, I wasn't going to try to make you a devil. That's your decision, and I'm sure you'd tell me if you wanted that. Dragons were decisive and sometimes a bit brash about their desires, and Riaz saw no reason that Issei, even if was a little awkward, would be much different. The offer is for you to join the Occult Research Club. You may not be a member of my peerage, but you could be around others that you can relate to, and I'd consider you the closest thing to family. Devil work might even be fun, you'll see. I'm already in the Kendo Club, Issei pointed out. Riaz rolled her eyes good-naturedly at the unimaginative response. This club's more of a front. It would rarely detract much time from Kendo. It is strange, I've never met a dragon who uses a sword. I don't, he said, use a sword, I mean. Uncle thought it was weird too, saying my claws were plenty sharp. I like it though. I'd never had to learn skill and not strength before. Issei realized he wasn't addressing the more important issue at hand, the hanging question that Riaz had asked. Oh, right, sorry. I'd like to join your club. Sounds fun. Think I could get any good fights in? Later I'll get Udo to help with your kendo. He's a talented swordsman, you know, and I'm sure it would be fun to watch you in action. So, what's next? The kendo put a hand to her mouth and chuckled at the dragon's impatience. Riaz was the one to reply, though, being the leader and all. You should probably be leaving, unless you want to miss practice. You're late, Kaneko elaborated. I am? I could have sworn it was an hour from now. Issei panicked, flailing around for a couple seconds. Oh man, I've gotta go. See ya. He got up and began running for the door. Meet us here tomorrow after your club. Riaz called after him, amused by his antics. As the Occult Research Club processed what just happened, Riaz thought over their newest member. Obviously, she wanted him as a servant, since a powerful dragon in her peerage would be the talk of the underworld. Maybe then she could stand a chance against him, and maybe Issei would one day be as famous as Tannen. Though, she would only reincarnate him if that's what he wanted. She wasn't a slaver, since she cared far more about saving worthy lives than taking them. I can't wait to see where this goes, she commented. Fufufu, Akeno giggled, you and me both. Following Issei's recount of his date with Raynare, Drake was almost furious. Azazel had let something like this happen. The Welsh dragon knew that the fallen angel leader was lax, but leaving subordinates with the initiative to attack Issei was a clear violation of their agreement. When the two first met a year ago, Drake had consented to giving over the book and becoming the man's drinking buddy, as long as they were kept relatively hidden. He doubted Azazel had sent Raynare for anything more than to monitor Issei, as any responsible faction leader would do, though he should have had more control over her actions. Now, he was meeting with the Governor General himself, having stormed through the office building the Grigori was stationed in. Though it seemed rash, Drake knew that no one there would ever identify him as a heavenly dragon, while they may know he was not what he seemed to be. Sir. A woman, a mid-class fallen angel, exclaimed, standing in front of him. You have to make an appointment first. The dragon shoved her aside effortlessly, tossing her into the opposite wall. He will see me. He was more irritated than angry, but he was tired of Issei drawing the short straw every time, and it was time to fix it. That said, she opened the door to Azazel's room, barely managing to keep his energy signature normal. The fallen angel himself was sitting at his desk, legs propped up in a bored fashion, but he wasn't the only one there. In the corner, a silver-haired teen stood with his arms crossed as if uninterested. His icy blue eyes were slightly cracked open, almost like he was deciding if the intruder was worth his time looking at. He wore a black leather jacket, a green t-shirt and jeans, an outfit somewhat similar to what Drake often wore. Though, the appearance wasn't what drew Drake's attention to the boy. It was his sacred gear. So, this is the boy who hosts Albion. He pondered, impressed. He seems quite strong for his age, though I'm sure he'd be no match for my partner. Call it his pride talking, but Drake knew that for a fact. Still, even Albion couldn't detect who he was as long as he remained collected, calm, and careful. Now wasn't the time to reveal himself to his rival. Not that he'd ever find a right time, he was just certain that it wasn't then. Azazel sighed. To what do I owe the pleasure, Red? Yeah, Red Haidu was his fake name for the human world. Kind of lame, but better than Welsh or something obvious. In all fairness, it was Azazel, not him, who picked it. I don't suppose you came here for a drink. No, I didn't, he replied evenly, his expression betraying the tone. Bali, you can leave us alone. Azazel instructed. Hein, the teen replied, his voice indifferent. Instead of walking out like any normal person, he decided to use a magic transport circle for whatever reason. As soon as the blue-white color of his magic faded, the two powerful titans were left staring each other down. Azazel didn't even make a move to grab his sacred gear, seeming perfectly composed. The first to break the tension was Drake. So that's Vali, he commented. He's much stronger than most of his hosts. Azazel chuckled. I raised him myself, what did you expect? Though, I have yet to tell him that the one he'll be fighting is the true Red Dragon Emperor. If this conversation happened another time, the dragon might have grinned. I am not the one he will fight. Fair enough. Now that formalities are over, Azazel began, taking his feet off the desk. Tell me what you came here for. Wait, he had no idea what his underling had done. You know what happened with Raynare? No, I don't, the Fallen replied, but I'm guessing you don't like that, so I asked her to follow Issei. You of all people would understand why I prefer to keep an eye on people. The two generally had a good understanding. Both enjoyed a good night out, were popular with the ladies, and held enormous power. Azazel, though, loved his games. That led to him being someone who liked knowing everything that was going on, even when that concerned something like Drake's nephew. She was just supposed to follow him, Drake stated. Well, she did a lot more than that. She broke his confidence and nearly made him lose control. You mean she acted without my explicit orders and tried to kill him? At Drake's surprised look, he shrugged. Raynaud's been acting out recently, on the hunt for praise, admiration, power, who knows. The point is, I gave her this simple task for a second chance and to remind her that I trust her. I guess that trust was violated. You guess? The red dragon almost growled. My nephew almost destroyed half of Kuo. Azazel seemed far too impartial with this. Almost. I'm sure he gave Raynare what she deserved. She should know better than to conspire without knowing all the details. You're lucky he didn't. He could have reverted to how he was with Acnologia. Azazel was the only one who knew just what that meant. If Issei considered power as sacred as his father and he chose to hunt for more, a dragon of his potential could become one of the strongest beings in the world. Not only that, he would obliterate those who challenged him or threatened his omnipotence. And Azazel was fully aware that Drake would help his nephew, even if he would rather not. When it came down to it, the two were family, and families stuck together no matter how Issei acted. Issei could probably become an evil dragon, one who has completely lost themselves, and his uncle would still refuse to abandon him. But that viewpoint, there's no way you should have let him out into the world. Cut him some slack and let him learn on his own. God knows the kid needs it. The fallen angel was definitely too lax about this, but that's what one can expect from someone who wasn't a fan of structuring life. There was also the fact that he was an angel who fell because of his inability to follow rules, though that's a whole different point. He's 17. Drake argued. He hadn't lived on his own until well past 50. That was met with an eye roll. Exactly. Time for him to figure out that not everything's sunshine and rainbows, and there are people out there who have less than honest intentions. Less than honest, that was a way of sugar-coating the life of deceit and lies that the underworld's two factions seemed to adore. You know nothing of dragons, Azazel. Before the Fallen could reply, he was interrupted. No, Drake, but I do. Wait, that was from Azazel's artificial sacred gear, down-fall dragon spear, containing Fafnir, the Gigantus Dragon King. Fafnir, this doesn't concern you. He could hear the sealed dragon scoff. I never raised a hatchling, Drake. That said, the only way you'll get Issei to forget about the one he calls father is by having him experience firsthand how the world works. He will come to his own conclusions about Acnologia in time. Coming to his own conclusion could be disastrous though, Drake had to consider that fact. Well said, Azazel approved. I've always found Fafnir to be reasonable. Reasonable, he repeated, sarcastically. Fafnir hadn't ever raised a child, how was that supposed to be reasonable? The Fallen sighed at the stubborn heavenly dragon. Will you at least consider it? It won't kill you. Alright, I'll consider it, Drake relented, suffering another blow to his pride. That brought relief all around. Don't fret too much over this, Drake, Issei's tough. Under his breath, the red dragon muttered, his heart is softer than the rest of him. The kid may not know it yet, but from what his uncle had seen, he was kind-hearted beyond measure. Befriending Gilderts despite years of Acnologia's teaching was proof of that, and his heart would one day either bring him triumph or ruin. I'll have Raynare locked up when she comes back and give her a lecture or two. This won't happen twice. Thank you, both of you. Issei just met with some of the devils in the area, and I'm curious as to what happened, so I'm heading back to my place. Drake began walking back towards the door. Don't forget we're meeting up Friday for drinks, he kept walking without a word, prompting the fallen to stand up and slam his fist on the desk. Oi, Drake, don't ignore me. You know I wouldn't miss a chance like that, the dragon laughed. With that, he closed the door behind him, making Azazel once again alone. The leader sat down and rubbed his temples for a couple seconds before resting his head in his hand, bored. While we're talking about your mistakes, you still haven't gotten me that secretary's panties. Fafnir, well, an upstanding and reasonable dragon, had an enormous panty fetish, one that Azazel was happy to oblige. Trust me, she's a challenge, but it'll be worth the wait. I don't regret this partnership for a second. Back at the Haidu residence, Issei had gotten back from an especially lame kendo practice that hardly compared to the unusual meeting with Ria's Gremory and her peerage. He knew she was leading the conversation a bit back then, but he couldn't help but find her honesty admirable for a devil. He also knew that her peerage was full of kind and humble people who would never accept a tyrannical king, and that was probably the reason he chose to join the club in the first place. Well, that and it would be better to hang out with devils who could appreciate how strong he was instead of humans who he couldn't show off to. What? He was a dragon, pride practically ran in his blood. Currently, he was in his room gaming. Drake rarely cared what he did in his free time and what grades he got in school, so after kendo and his own personal training, he would kick back and relax. Between his 3DS computer and PS4, donations from that unknown benefactor that Drake hung out with so often, he had everything he would ever need. The fact that he could get all these games and consoles meant that whatever birthday present Drake was withholding could be even more exceptional than anticipated. Then, he smelled a familiar person enter the house. Hey uncle. Drake walked into Issei's room and leaned over his shoulder, watching him get wrecked in Smash Bros. Hey, partner. So, I met up with my contact in the Gregory, and they assured me that Raynare would be dealt with accordingly. She was an ass and I hate her, but she's not important enough for that. Okay, Drake was a bit lost. Just yesterday, Issei had been pissed over what she'd done, and now he had accepted it. It's more my fault for being weak. Don't worry, it won't happen again. I'm hanging with the devils at school now, so they'll spot anything like that. Really? I thought you said that dragons don't need to pick sides, Drake recalled. That was a year ago, Issei was dismissed, still a little distracted by his game. Ria's Gremory isn't bad. She even showered in the clubroom. There's a shower in your club. Drake sighed. Are you sure you aren't just being a complete pervert? Issei's cheeks flushed a rosy red. She is amazing, Drake, even better than that brunette you brought over a month ago. The Welsh dragon rejected, she's too young to be that hot. She is a devil, Issei argued. But she wasn't just a beauty. She was really nice and cared for her peerage. You seem too interested in the Gremory devil. Drake became suspicious. You don't want to be a servant, do you? The connotation was not lost on his nephew. No. I mean, she's a good devil and all, but if I become a devil, then how would I be a dragon king? That was as fair a reason as any, Drake supposed. With Issei's goal to become a dragon king then surpass his father, he definitely didn't want to take a step down in strength by becoming the servant of someone weaker than him. Though, he could also be referring to the fact that Tannen, now a devil, had to relinquish the title of Dragon King. That's your only reason. Suddenly, the atmosphere changed. Issei placed his 3DS down and faced his uncle, completely serious. I don't care how messed up he is, I won't disappoint my father. It seemed Issei's misplaced admiration hadn't wavered in the slightest, even if he was no longer anything like the Black Chaos Dragon. There was complete silence. Issei finally picked his game back up and refocused his attention. Do you know why Tannen wanted to be a devil? Drake hummed, relieved for a change in topic. He is a good dragon, if misguided. He strongly believes that our race is in danger because we are too arrogant, so he became a devil to protect the next generation. As a dragon king, the raiding games the devils played probably seemed a good test of strength and ability. Raiding games? I thought I taught you about them. You didn't forget, did you? Issei rubbed the back of his head and smiled dumbly. Please, Great Red, spare me from my idiot nephew, he ruthlessly teased. It is a series of competitions where one king and their peerage fights against another. They have ranking systems and large battlefields, and the fights are televised. Tannen's gotten a reputation for being on the ultimate class. That actually sounds pretty cool, the brunette pondered. Don't tell me you've changed your mind. Hell no. The team grinned. Good. About that club that you joined with the devils. What can you actually do? He had no idea how a non-devil could contribute anything to a bunch of devils fulfilling packs and taking out strays far below a dragon's level. Issei had stopped by after Kendo and asked a similar question. After Riaz was done reassuring him that, devil or not, he'd be a huge addition to the occult research club, she told him what he'd be doing. But you said I could see what it's like to meet with clients. I also get to practice my swordsmanship with Yudo, and he's a knight who's been using swords forever. So, she's but you now. Already, she basically has you as a trial run devil. First he calls her president then master. Drake still wasn't entirely sure she wasn't just playing him. From what he had heard about the Gremory family, however, he seriously doubted it. Though they could manipulate with the best of them, they wouldn't be so obvious or straightforward about it, nor would they be that ignorant of Issei's intentions. Yeah. It'll be fun. I'll show them what it means to be a dragon, just like you said. At least Issei hadn't gotten any less determined. Still, there was always time to make a joke out of the situation, especially when Issei was so self-conscious when it came to women. I hope you don't spend too much time staring at your president's boobs. And no faith. Issei whined. Ice-kun, Riaz was saying, now that you're a member of the occult research club, you have obligations just like the rest of us. It was a day later after school when the club met again in the old school building. Usually, Riaz peerage would stay there until they went home for the night, meaning it was an all-day affair. Issei decided that Drake wouldn't mind him getting home around 11 or 12 each night, so he spent much of the afternoon there after Kendo ended. Obligations. He complained. Riaz nodded. I told you yesterday that you'll be subbing in for a few clients as a temp devil, right? Well, Kaneko's double booked for tonight, so you'll be meeting with one of her clients. Are you sure that's okay? I mean, I'm not even a devil. Iridid smiled. Ice, you're plenty able to fulfill a contract. I even have this handy tool that should calculate the price you should ask for. Of course, the contract would still belong to Kaneko, since you're not eligible, but I think it'll be a fun way for you to meet people. Seems more like an odd way to meet people, he thought, a bit lost. Kaneko-chan must be a pretty awesome devil if she gets all those requests. People like cute and strong, Riaz shrugged. I'm glad you're helping out. Yeah, you're rad, Issei senpai. He'd never get used to her using words like rad. Whatever helps you out. How am I supposed to get there, though? Those leaflets have some type of teleport circle, right? Riaz hummed in thought for a second. I could give you the mark of my family to allow you to use my magic circle. Issei shook his head. You guys are cool and all, but I'm not your servant. Gaining the ability to specifically use Riaz family's transportation circles would mean that he would be an honorary member of their family. That implied he'd be a servant devil, which wouldn't be that bad in the Gremory household, but it was something he had decided against for the time being. Plus, he already had a family, even if half of it was in a different world. Well, then you have to find your own way there. Your device should also show location. That's cool, Issei replied to reassure them. I love flying anyways. Flying at night was truly one of his favorite things. After they let him go, he was off in a heartbeat, a huge grin on his face. He even used his hybrid form, something he hadn't done at all recently, since he hadn't had much reason to go flying. In this form, he had taken some advice from Drake and covered himself properly, since it wasn't logical to fight against any other species. Similarly to Tannen, Issei wore 2 shoulder pads that connected in the back, almost like a short cape, and a loincloth, all in dark gray to stand out from his pitch black scales. Though it was a short trip, the darkness made for nigh infallible cover that he could enjoy for hours, and he didn't have to be worried about devils or fallen angels spotting him anymore. For a while, he felt unburdened and free, like how he was supposed to feel. It wasn't long before he had landed at a door, resuming his human form, Kuo Academy uniform returning along with it, and checking his crude GPS to make sure he was in the right spot. Then, he knocked. Hey, Mortasawa-san, I'm with the devil you called for. Can you open up? The 20-some-year-old, thin man with black hair and glasses opened the door, seeing the brown-haired teen still knocking. Oh, hey. Get out of here. Wait. Issei yelled, grabbing the door as the man tried to slam it shut. What kind of devil knocks on doors? And the one I summoned is Kaneko-chan, not you. I'm not a devil, the teen replied. I'm a dragon. Really? Morisawa sarcastically shot back. You sure look the part. Issei was annoyed already, but he was determined not to give up on the contract. Kaneko-chan was busy today, so she sent me instead. Instead of debating this further, he spread out his wings, surprising the man. I suppose you can come in, he decided eventually, opening the door all the way. Issei stepped into Morisawa's small apartment. Though small, it was by no means generic. Posters for Dragon Ball and other anime lined the walls, and his computer had a large stack of games right next to it. Issei recognized a couple of the games, but he wasn't too well versed with most of the other references and posters around the room. Do you want any tea? Do dragons even drink tea? He still doesn't believe me, Issei, not looking forward to having to prove he was telling the truth. Sure, I'll have some. The man nodded and went into the kitchen and grabbed 2 cups, probably already prepared for him and Kaneko. What does Kaneko-chan normally do for you? I've never done this before, so I'm kind of out of my element here. Great a newbie, he lamented, placing 2 cups of tea on the table. I wished for a cute devil, and I got some kid claiming he's a dragon, and now he says he's a newbie. I'm right here, you know. Issei exclaimed. Morisawa really didn't seem to care. Yeah. I wished for Kaneko because I wanted her to wear this. He grabbed a girl's school uniform that was hanging on the door. At Issei's blank look, he elaborated. It's the uniform of Nagato Yuki. He sighed. From Suzumi Yaharui. The popular anime. Sorry, Morisawa-san, the brunette replied timidly. I won't wear that. The man was agitated but remained outwardly calm. Of course you won't. He shouted, as if offended at the thought. Alright then, since you're a dragon, you must have some special skill, like Kaneko-chan's super strength. She can literally sweep me off my feet. He liked being carried by such a young cute girl. Well, to each his own, Issei supposed, but he'd never let his pride fall so far. He supposed he could tell him about his magic, since Morisawa didn't have any reason to tell anyone else. I use Chaos Dragon magic. Magic, huh? Yeah, it's good at blowing things up. Actually, that was pretty much all Chaos Dragon magic was useful for, and the rest he could do with the typical magic Drake taught him. Sounds strong. Nowhere near as strong as the dragons from Dragon Ball, but still cool. How can he judge so quickly? If Issei kept up conversations like this, he'd be a self-conscious mess. I don't suppose you could show me? I in here. I don't want to wreck anything. Then don't claim you can. The man shot back. This logic was seriously baffling. Okay, fine. Here, Issei stood up and gathered his energy around his hand until it was actually creating a powerful current in the room. Too late he realized this was a terrible idea. Chaos Dragon's fist. He declared, punching the table and pulverizing everything, making Morisawa drop his tea, the cup shattering on the ground. I'm sorry. Issei panicked, I just had to prove. Wait, what exactly was he trying to prove again? All he could focus on was the distinct lack of a table and the splinters impaled in the wall. That was awesome. The man exclaimed. Did Issei hear him say awesome? That table was pretty expensive and that was what he was focusing on. Still, that hardly seems worthy of a dragon. I didn't use any of my power, the brunette muttered. It was about then that he figured that he should take this man's judgmental words to heart and instead just enjoy his time. Morisawa nodded, understanding. For my contract, you'll get me a new table. But first, I have some anime to show you. Issei was in for a long and interesting night. The next morning, Issei was exhausted. He had gone home and gotten about 2 hours of sleep before his alarm clock blazed to life, signifying the one thing he'd rather forget about. School. With a slam, he accidentally shattered the thing into bits. Watching an anime was cool and all, but the endless commentary and spoilers from Morisawa got old quickly. The dude was a die-hard Dragon Ball fan, and he even tried to get Issei to do Kamehameha, which the latter refused. Showing off, while it was fun at first, ended up straight up ridiculous when the requests got weirder and weirder. The school day was just as insufferable, and Issei found himself skipping kendo completely, just so he didn't have to deal with hyperactive girls beating the crap out of each other, and sometimes him. Sure, he would have been fine, since any normal human would only be able to deal minimal damage, but it was still tiring to work on katas and form, and he had enough of tiring. So, he found himself wandering into the old school building half awake and yawning. Riaz was already in the room, and everyone else had yet to arrive. I heard what you did for Kaneko. Spending all night with her client was very kind of you. Morisawa-sen gave quite a positive review. I broke his table, Issei said, then we talked for hours. He was a nice guy, but it was exhausting, and I didn't get much sleep. Riaz laughed softly. It's not often a contract requires a devil to fix someone's table. I assure you that most are a little less mundane. Trust me, that wasn't mundane. I know more about Dragon Ball Z than I have any right to. Do we ever get to battle anyone? Well, there are times we're called to take down a stray devil, like the one from 2 years ago. They abandon their masters in their own greed and become a menace towards humans. The stray you met was particularly foul. Apart from that, there's the raiding games. Yeah, those sound really cool. Fighting just for the purpose of fighting was something dragons were great at. Most weren't too prideful or bloodthirsty at Issei's age, yet he was raised by one of the most self-centered dragons of them all. I heard about them from my uncle, but I won't join them. I'll still fight Tannen one day, so they'll recognize me as a Dragon King. Recognize you? Riaz wondered aloud. You are up to speed on devil culture, at least as much as one would expect a non-devil to be, but I know next to nothing about dragons. I'm your club president and, although you are not my servant, learning about their system would help me understand you better. Issei rubbed his head in thought. We're not that organized. All titles and stuff are honorary mostly and just for respect. Dragons start anywhere in low, mid, or high class. Earth dragons are considered mid-class, but if one grows strong enough they could become high class. I'm considered high class right now, but that runs from sprite dragons to anything short of Dragon King, so don't think I'm weak for a second. Riaz would have never considered Issei as weak, and both knew it. A dragon can advance in status by defeating a stronger dragon, or they can become so tough that everyone recognizes them as completely awesome. I want to beat up Tan and make the 5 great Dragon King 6 again. Then, I'll challenge my father. Ah yes, that's a noble goal, Ice-kun, she smiled, standing closer to him. I too want to step out of the shadow of my family's name. I'd rather be known as Riaz than the heiress of Gremory. The door opened and Aceno came in, giggling at the sight of Issei and Riaz standing so close to each other. Followed by her was Yudo and Kaneko. Ara, you two seem to be having fun. Riaz rolled her eyes. Nothing happened, Aceno. That didn't stop her teasing. So Issei-kun is available then? No. Both Riaz and Issei shouted. They stared at each other for a second, then the dragon broke the awkward pause. I'm not dating right now. Iridid nodded, agreeing. It's too soon. Ara, all I hear is you taking an interest in our adorable dot. I'm not adorable. Issei complained. I'm not interested. Riaz defended simultaneously. She was interested in Issei, but not in that way. Kiba shook his head, a smirk growing on the prince's features. Kaneko didn't seem as involved with the situation. You're all crazy. Straight through the heart, Kaneko-chan, Issei cried inwardly. She turned to Issei and bowed. Thank you for the contract. There. It was my pleasure. The guy thought dragons were the best, so we had a fun time. Issei added a mental note that they were the best. Back when he lived in Kuo as a child, whether he remembered or not, he thought they were awe-inspiring, and it was only fitting that he was one now. Narcissist Kaneko supplied her with an intense form of humor. You're epic though. Kiba chose now to speak up. Are you skipping kendo club, Issei-san? He inquired politely. Issei shrugged. It's 5 days a week. They can miss me for one of them. Don't think you're getting out of sparring just yet, Ice-kun, Riaz interrupted. But you wants to set up a spar between the two of us, Kiba elaborated. After hearing about your talent in kendo, I'm eager for this test. Well, I wouldn't call it talent. Swords definitely aren't my best way of fighting. It was strange for a dragon to ever consider using a weapon, and often it meant a complete lack of self-confidence and the strength of one's body. That didn't stop Issei from wanting to learn it, though it was mostly for his own entertainment and not for actual battle situations. You're modest enough about this that it's offensive, Kiba pointed out. I'm sure you are very strong in yourself, but your kendo is skilled too. Not comparatively, he thought to himself, relenting. It'll be fun to have more of a challenge. I never got to let loose when competing against humans. When he trained, he strove for finesse, not strength, so he always used his base, human ability independent of any magic power he had. It gave him the rush of becoming stronger all over again. I agree. Riaz propped a hand on a table. Now that that's settled, I know the perfect place for you too. Oddly enough, as it turned out, there was an open area behind the school that had nothing but perfectly manicured grass and a few leafy trees. It seemed like a nice area for a picnic, Issei considered randomly. Kiba and Issei stood facing each other, neither with a weapon at the moment. While Kiba seemed focused, yet easygoing about the ordeal, the dragon's mind was wandering a little. Oh, wait. I don't even own a real blade anyways. That's right, they always use Bakken for their pseudo-battles in kendo, even for competitions, since humans seem to be adverse to real danger. Despite that, it was a sword fight. The knight drew his weapon, a typical sword one would expect from a knight. Do you not have a sword, Issei-san? Though Kiba was polite, Issei was sure that the blonde was mocking him. No. Here you go, then. He reached out his other hand, and blue energy coalesced into the form of a sword, creating an exact duplicate of his. Then, he tossed it to the dragon, who snatched it out of the air with ease. Ready, pretty boy? Kiba smirked. Whenever you are. And, he could not get a rise out of Kiba, could he? After a short moment of failure, he walked purposefully towards the prince. Let's go. With that declaration, he thrust his sword at the blonde's dot. Kiba parried easily, countering with his own swipe. Issei bashed it aside just before it struck him in the shoulder, but the knight was already launching another attack. The dragon found himself on the defensive, the knight's formidable speed allowing him to continue unhindered. After a few blows, Issei saw an opening in the barrage and took it, forcefully slamming Kiba's sword far above his head. Just as he went in for the win, Kiba deftly flipped over and blocked. This devil was no slouch at all, but Issei wasn't done yet. While the knight was faster, it was the dragon's turn. Issei stepped in, getting closer, then the two continued trading blows with speed and precision. Then, he knocked Kiba's sword away again, this time to his right, yet the knight pivoted and kicked Issei in the chin before he could end it. The two skidded back and took a respite. Moments later, Kiba was back on the attack, feigning a jab to his stomach. Issei jumped to the right to avoid it, though Kiba was expecting that and crashed into him, knocking him off balance. The blonde seized the moment to place his sword against the dragon's neck. "You're quick," Issei complimented. Kiba removed the sword. "Do you really think so little of me that you won't use any magic power?" The knight wasn't using much, yet he knew the fight shouldn't be this basic. "If you want to get serious, that's fine by me," the brunette replied, letting his wings appear behind him. He then channeled enough energy in his sword to make it gain a distinctively blue hue. Issei, with a burst of power from his wings, surged forward at impressive speeds, swiping right at Kiba's head, who ducked just in time. Then there was another slash, this time at his knees, so he jumped and stuck his sword out, parrying the uppercut that came after and landing lightly on his feet. The blonde tried to regain momentum, but he kept being pushed back and was forced to dodge. There. Issei spotted an opportunity and swung his sword downwards towards Kiba's shoulder. With a clang, the knight blocked it, so Issei swung a magic-packed punch. Right before it hit, a sword materialized in Kiba's left hand, which he stabbed towards Issei's. Eyes wide, the dragon hopped back in time, taking to the air with a quick beat of his wings. But he wasn't quite quick enough, leading to a minute sting in his stomach. Blood. He looked down, noticing the small, barely skin-deep scratch. "Shall we take this up another notch?" Kiba suggested, clearly having fun. "Let's." With that said, Issei knew going into any stronger form would give his opponent little chance at lasting 1 second. Still, he flared his energy slightly for the spirit of it all. Evil wings opened from Kiba's back, and he let his power increase exponentially, concentrated in whatever that sacred gear of his was. "My sacred gear, as you have seen, allows me to create swords at will. It's called Sword Birth. Here's a demonstration." A magic circle appeared in front of him, then giant swords burst from the ground under Issei, forcing him to gain altitude. His attention somewhat distracted, Kiba leaped into the air and the two clashed swords again, the smaller knight being bounced away by the impact. Issei smirked, gathering the energy along his blade. Chaos Dragon Slash. A wave of energy, razor-thin and sharp, flew at Kiba, who barely managed to dodge the unexpected attack. When it hit the ground, there was a small explosion and a lion-shaped indent. But Issei didn't let the pause lengthen, flying at Kiba and slamming his sword against both of the knights. Though the blonde managed to block it, he was smashed to the ground from the immense force behind the attack, landing painfully on his back. When he leaned to get up, a sword was pointed at his neck. "You wanted me to win," Issei argued sheepishly, reaching a hand out. Kiba laughed, then smiled, accepting the hand and standing up. "I suppose I did. You're really something." The kendo made her presence known. Ara, I like a man with talent." "Yes, you both did magnificently," Rias praised. "And I still have yet to see the true extent of your power, Ice-kun." She almost laughed for some reason, probably at how Issei beat one of her knights without much problem and had much more left. "You were cut," Kaneko pointed out. Issei's face almost reddened from embarrassment at his mistake. "Kiba's second sword surprised me. It's pretty sharp too, better than that fallen angel's light spear." "So our tough guy isn't so tough after all," Akeno chuckled. Rias didn't seem to share her amusement. "This isn't Ice-kun's normal form." She trailed off, talking quieter to herself, though everyone could still hear. That level of resistance without the protection of a dragon's scales. She smiled at Issei and, at regular volume, said, "You really are amazing. Udo isn't an easy opponent." "Thanks," Issei blushed. One day, he knew he would show them just how powerful he was. But today, he had homework. The next few days, Issei found that sparring with Kiba was almost a substitute for kendo club. The knight taught him a few tricks with the sword that were useful in real fights, while Issei gave him an insurmountable challenge that Kiba surprisingly welcomed. The dragon still went to kendo club a couple times a week, and his dwindling attendance made his two co-captain friends upset. Having his only two human friends upset was not on the top of his list, so he attended kendo today and decided to head home after. Well, not directly home. Something had compelled him to take a walk through the park. It was like an alluring smell, except he could neither smell nor sense a thing, not that he realized how strange that was in the spur of the moment. After wandering around for a few minutes, remarking to himself on the superb weather, he shrugged and began to head home. Just then, he heard a startled cry. "Ah!" He turned to see a blonde-haired girl sprawled on the ground. Her clothing was strange, something he recognized as what a nun would wear. Was this cute little girl a nun? "Are you alright?" Issei helped her up. Oh. Yeah. I'm okay. Once she stood up, a gust of wind blew her white shawl off her head and she opened her bright green eyes in shock. The dragon stared at her face for a while, feeling odd. What is this? He wondered, only then noticing that he was still holding her hand. Ah, sorry. The nun's white fabric blew away again, but he snatched it out of the air without much effort. Here you go. Thank you. That was very sweet of you, she thanked, radiating an aura of benevolence and compassion. She seems so innocent. She's pretty too, but more in the cute way than the way. Issei liked women, not girls, though he still had this attraction to the blonde, and he wasn't sure why. Don't worry, it was nothing. Are you a member of the church? Yeah, she replied. I'm a bit lost. Do you think you could help me out? She ended it with a wide smile and put her hands together as if in prayer, an insanely adorable gesture that made Issei melt. He could imagine how tough it would be to get lost in a foreign country when you spoke a different language. Thankfully, Tannen, in his close work with devils, had invented a translation spell that worked for dragons in a manner similar to the devil's innate ability. I've only lived here for a year and a half, but I'm sure I could help you find wherever you're going. He gave her a thumbs up, and she blushed. She picked her brown satchel that she dropped and began walking alongside Issei. I'm so glad I ran into someone kind like you. Really? Issei grinned back. Yes. I guess someone really is looking out for me. Yeah, the brunette agreed happily. So, where are we going? Oh, I'm terribly sorry. She panicked. We just started walking and I didn't tell you where to. Wow, she really was a kind-hearted girl. Don't worry about it. The blonde seemed to compose herself. I was recently stationed at the church here, but I'm having trouble finding it. There's a kind of creepy one on the top of a hill. Is that it? She hummed. Well, I think they mentioned a hill. Great, then let's check it out. What? Why was he so focused on helping her out? Surely she couldn't be that much more different than the hundreds of other humans that pass through Kuo on a daily basis. Sure, she was probably the nicest person he'd ever met, and that was without getting to know her, but he felt a little too protective over her. You're so kind, Mr. Mister? My name's Issei Haidu. It felt nice to say it in that order, and since she was foreign she'd understand fine. Japan's first use of surnames was funky. Pleased to meet you, Issei-san. I am Asia Argento. Just Issei is fine. I'm not Japanese either. Out of the blue, a pained cry filled the air. A young boy, probably around 9 or 10, was laying on the ground in tears. It seemed he had tripped and scraped his knee, reminding Issei of how fragile humans were. He was about to keep on walking when he noticed Asia wasn't at his side anymore, and she ran over to help the injured boy. She rubbed his head comfortingly. A big boy like you shouldn't cry over a scrape. Don't worry, you're going to be fine. She placed both of her hands above his knee, and Issei's eyes widened at what happened. A silver ring materialized on her finger, and a green light emanated from her palms. Then, before his eyes, the wound healed until there was no trace left. Unconsciously, he remembered the small scratch Kiba had given him, and not even that it healed so perfectly. You see, there's no reason for you to cry at all. She faced Issei and added, all done now, sorry. Was there any way for her to get cuter? She had even stuck her tongue out when she said that. What? Oh yeah. They resumed walking, turning onto the street corner in silence. Issei wasn't one for awkward pauses, but he was deep in thought about Asia's power. Immediately, he had figured out that it was a sacred gear, yet he never learned about any sacred gears that could heal others. It was a power that was meant for someone selfless, just like Asia. You must be surprised. Huh? Issei replied, startled out of his thoughts. Oh, no, not at all. The ability to heal, that's pretty nifty. It could make anyone durable enough to take a bunch of hits with minimal damage nigh unstoppable too. She smiled warmly. Thank you. I consider it to be a gift and a blessing. In a way, it is kind of both, since it originates from God, Issei mused. Truly it's wonderful. Did she just sound almost mournful? But something like that, something that could help others, was something Issei had been looking for ever since Gildert's first lectured him on life. If he had that sacred gear instead of being Acnologia's son, would he be happier? No. I would still be weak, even if it's what Gildert's was talking about. No, he'd rather be a dragon, though he didn't stop thinking about what could have been if he could help others. Sorry, he mumbled out, before continuing normally. Say, being a nun who can heal sounds like fate. Fate? Asia jumped, seemingly never having made that connection. I suppose so. Being able to do God's work has made me happy. So, why does her tone suggest something more? Issei wondered. It was rude to pry any further, and Asia was already such an honest person that he didn't want to trouble her about her past. God knew he didn't want to talk about him. Isn't this the one? Issei asked, pointing off into the distance. It was a normal distance that humans could see, right? Because sometimes he seemed like an idiot when pointing out smells, sounds, or sights normal people couldn't register. I'm pretty sure it's the only church we have in town. Yep, there it is. Asia brightened up immediately, making him wonder if her somber tone was his imagination. Thank goodness we found it. That's a relief. Issei hummed in agreement. I would never have let you wander around lost. Let me thank you properly, then. Would you like to come inside with me? I don't know, I've never been to a church. Issei considered it. On one hand, it would definitely make Riaz upset, but he wasn't his servant, so there was nothing she could do. It also could mean he encountered angels, who might not like seeing a potential threat. On the other, Asia was so sweet, and he felt obligated to keep her safe and follow through on his commitment. The last thing he wanted was for anything to happen to her on the way there. Asia didn't seem offended that he didn't accept immediately. That's okay. You don't have to. You know what, that sounds awesome. Really? Oh, thank you, Issei. She seemed so overjoyed that it made him sport a grin too. The blonde nun truly did brighten the day. As the two walked towards the old church, they got to know one another a little better. Issei told her that he lived with his uncle, Red, and that he went to a private school called Kuo Academy. It was then that he learned that Asia had never actually gone to school, having spent her entire life in the care of the church. He supposed that it explained her compassionate personality, but he had no idea what could have occurred back then to make her question her sacred gear. The church itself was nothing much. Aside from the large grounds and interesting placement above the town, it was relatively like a normal building. Multicolored stained glass decorated the windows, and the architecture was practically the standard as far as churches go. The entire thing did seem pristine, however, and the white walls were newly painted. On the inside, there were the typical pews, but it was completely vacant. In fact, Issei didn't remember ever seeing anyone up here before. So, this is your stop, huh? She said. It was such a blessing to meet you, Issei, and I know for sure that I'll never forget your kindness. That was easily the most gratitude he'd ever received, and it felt nice. You're a very considerate and compassionate person, it was the least I could do. Asia nodded. Before you go, would you like to pray with me? I haven't prayed with anyone else in a while, and, well, she trailed off and blushed. Pray? For what? Someone to help him. What would he ever need to pray for that he couldn't go get himself? Issei was raised to do things for himself, even if his guardians were overprotective, but he had never heard of prayer helping. What would I pray for? Anything, silly. Asia joked with a huge grin. I always pray for a friend. Aren't I your friend? Issei asked, only noticing that he was so open about it afterwards. Of course, she agreed. My prayers must have been answered. So, why don't you pray for what you want to? It was meant to be rhetorical, but the answer was all too clear. Issei rubbed the back of his head. I'm not sure God will want to listen to me. I've done bad things in the past, and I'm not sure I regret them enough to ask for forgiveness. Oh, Asia seemed to deflate. That's fine. He placed his hand on her shoulder for a second. I should get going, but I'd like to meet up with you again. Just come and see me here, at the church. Asia smiled, giving him a little wave. Issei returned the gesture and turned to leave. Still, before he returned to his home, something didn't feel right. Sure, the church itself was a bit off and smelt funny, but there was something else that he had to get off his dot. Only now did he discover what he was. Asia, before I leave, I want you to know something. I'm not a human, I'm a dragon. Oh, okay. She didn't shift her gleeful expression at all. Not only that, but it sounded like she believed him and was totally accepting of the fact. You're the first dragon I've met. You're not scared or anything. Nope, Asia replied, as if it was obvious. Because you're my friend, Issei. That sentence hit him right in the heart, almost making him laugh uncontrollably with a mixture of relief and something else he couldn't identify. When he calmed down, he waved again. I'll meet with you in a couple days, then. Bye, Asia. As the clear skies became streaked with color then eventually faded into the purples and navy blues of the evening, a woman walked through a dark alley, the shadows dancing along the path. She had long black hair and little clothing made mostly of measly black leather strips, but her most obvious feature was the violet eyes gazing wearily around her environment. She knew she was being watched, it was to be expected. After all, one does not go to visit her and expect it to be a surprise. Well, most didn't come back alive, but she liked to think she was a special case. She, Raynare, had an edge, a favor to call in. Though, as the sky grew darker, the plain metal door in front of her was beginning to look daunting. With a gulp, the normally confident fallen angel creaked open the door. It was almost pitch black, illuminated by only the feeble light the door let in. Barely, she could make out a figure, the woman she was searching for. The one with the answers. Raynare. Her voice was harsh, uncaring, as it was towards every other fallen angel. Or no Cabe. Her alias meant Wall of Night, a name that fit her unique skills well. It was said she had killed tens of fallen angels of varying strength by draining their magic in their sleep. No one but Raynare knew how she did it. The woman kept her dispassionate tone. Times must be dire for you to seek me out. Raynare bowed as a form of respect, a courtesy towards your Japanese heritage. I need your particular magic. So, you seek to call in your favor. Her voice always sounded so ominous, as if she was still haunted by the past and was threatening retribution in the future. That was what scared Raynare so much. Revenge could make people unpredictable, and Yor was well known for her revenge. Unfortunately, I'm worried my plans could be ruined by my ex. He's a dragon, by the way. No one. The woman let out a small huff of surprise, though whether it was genuine or not wasn't clear. Dangerous creatures, she mentioned offhand. Raynare sighed. Yes, they are. This one managed to make me believe he was human for almost a whole week. I just need the ability to delay him in case he becomes a problem. Will you be able to get close enough to touch them? It was an odd yet necessary question. Yes, that shouldn't be a problem. Raynare could have sworn that the mysterious woman's smirk was sinister. Then I can help you take care of this pest. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the DragonKingNatsu for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.